Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Holdren. I want to go back to the question of STEM education and the reorganization, because I do generally support the idea that we're consolidating some of these STEM education programs. I think it's important that the NSF play a very functional role in identifying what are the criteria for successful programs, what kind of guidance teachers need in order to be effective teachers. And it seems to me that there are a couple of categories that are distinguishable in our STEM funding: the sort of pre-K to 12 area, undergraduate, graduate education, and then the sort of nonprofit informal sector. And I think that there are different things that, for example, our centers in NASA or NOAA engage in communities and in developing STEM programs that are very distinct from the needs that take place in the K to 12 area in classroom and in the informal sector. And where I've seen a real problem is in the wide range of STEM programs in the informal sector, and without sometimes a lot of rhyme or reason in terms of the educational value, and not because there are bad people doing those things, but because they just don't know what makes a good program and what communities is their successful programming, what are the demographic groups that we're targeting so that we make sure that the educational value makes sense. And so I would hope that going forward you would be able to make these distinctions from a budget standpoint so that the good stuff that's happening, like at Goddard Space Flight Center and the role that it plays in our local community and working with our school system, and the NOAA Center, that those things aren't wiped out with the responsibility of the scientists who are really engaged in the research playing a role in developing that program, as distinct from these sort of informal programs that need, I think, a little bit more guidance and coherence. And so I wonder if you could tell me if you envision a role for scientists on the ground to participate with NSF, with the Department of Education, in rolling out effective programs in communities and developing materials, because I would think that we would not want to lose that kind of expertise and that sort of hands-on involvement of people who are really, doing real work on a day-to-day basis, but also engaged with our young people in the classrooms.
The short answer is absolutely yes. I appreciate very much the work that these programs at NOAA and NASA, and for that matter DOE and the Department of Defense, that have practicing scientists and engineers on the ground contributing to the educational process. These have been of great value. A lot of those programs have been left intact. Again, this reorganization affects about half of the dispersed programs that were out there, so half remain in place. And the ones that are being consolidated and moved in terms of their management to NSF or the Department of Education or the Smithsonian Institution, as I mentioned before, all of those agencies are determined to continue to tap the expertise in the dispersed mission agencies for these purposes. They've made that commitment to me. I've been talking to the leadership of all of those agencies about it. We are talking about it in the meetings of the Committee on STEM Education of the National Science and Technology Council, which I chair together with the acting NSF Director, Cora Merritt, and I believe it's going to happen. I believe we're going to get this right.
And just to follow up on that, can you also tell me about how you plan to continue to engage funding of basic research in historically black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions, because then those become the filters for graduate, undergraduate, and graduate education. And it seems to me that if you really want to get students engaged, a diverse population of students engaged, that they have to get there have to be opportunities in those institutions that serve them. And so I would hope that there is kind of a parallel development of funding of research in those institutions with what is happening in this reorganization of STEM programs.
I agree with that as well, and I would make two further points. One is that in this reorganization, we took care not to impact any programs connected with historically black colleges and universities or other programs that were explicitly focused on women or minorities in STEM. We are now in the process of conducting a further review to make sure we didn't miss anything in terms of indirect connections that might be affected. Because we're in complete agreement in this administration, the President feels very strongly about this, that one of the core elements of our STEM education efforts has to be to improve opportunities and access for women and minorities, other underrepresented groups in the STEM field. So we're taking that very seriously.